Affair. What ever started people to come up with the idea of getting together middle of February to fly hot air balloons when there's snow on the ground?
Well, winter flying's a lot of fun for all of us. I think a lot of us enjoy winter flying. And in 1990, I don't want to say made the mistake, but I told my boss at the time that I was thinking of inviting 10 pilots over to spend the weekend in my basement because there were so few hot air events in the wintertime. I think Bruce's in Mille Lacs was primarily the one that all of us went to. And so I just thought it would be something fun, have them all come over, spend the weekend in my basement, and have a barbecue and just make a good time out of it. And at that time, she was on the tourism board with the Chamber of Commerce. Well, she went to the the Chamber board and proceeded to tell them about it, and it just kind of snowballed. And the first year we had 30, and the second year we had 41, and last year we had 48, and this year we had 43, and it just has taken off.
So you got a few more people than would actually fit in your basement.
Yeah, I'd say.
Or else you have an awfully big basement.
No, not that big, not that big. But everyone, I think, the winter events are catching on more. The primary reason for running it in the winter was Hudson, being a river town, always has a lot of traffic through it in the summer. And the idea was to create traffic here in the winter and bring people in from out of town. And I mean, we had people that this weekend in town from Missouri and Georgia and, from literally all over the United States.
Is ballooning in the winter something unusual? Is this something you've created, or?
No. A lot of people don't think of ballooning as a winter activity when ideally it's probably the best winter sport you could ever have. You've got no wind chill factor because you're moving with it. You've got an onboard heater with you, with the burners going. Everywhere's a landing spot. The crops are down. You see a lot more wildlife, the leaves off the trees, and the balloons fly so much more efficiently because they burn so little fuel for lift.
Tell me, today with the inclement weather conditions, is that the norm or is this an exception for winter flying?
This is an exception. I have flown this weekend every year, except this one, for 11 years. And this low cloud cover is just keeping us down.
Are there other events like this? Is this fairly unique for the area? Or?
No, actually we got 5 weekends in a row. We had White Bear Lake 2 weeks ago. Last weekend Russ ran a race in Chisago. And then my event this weekend. Next weekend there's one in Mankato. And the following weekend we go up to Bruce's event up at Lake Mille Lacs.
Okay. So there are an amount of people that will get together and do this sort of on a regular basis.
Yeah, I think there's a real camaraderie amidst all of us idiots.
Well, it sort of looks like it, especially if we could get these many people together just around the table.
Yeah.
Why fly? Why, Dave, you've driven in from Rapid City, South Dakota?
Yes.
What prompts someone to drive in, 650, 700 miles, something like that, to set up a hot air balloon?
Well, I've known Rose for quite a few years, and she's helped us out with rallies we've had, and she just called up and said, well, you'll be here, and so here I am. Didn't want to make her mad.
You will be here, yeah.
Didn't want to make her angry or beat me up or anything, so. As Rose said, it gets to be quite a camaraderie of balloons. Terry has a rally. We have one down in Rapid City, and we've all become good friends over the years, and we help each other out with the rallies.
So it's pretty common then that you all get together somewhat on a somewhat annual basis, and
yes, one of the things I really enjoy about coming up to this rally, I don't enjoy the long drive, but it's a lot of fun to see the community really get involved with it. I see people out there with not just coming out, but bundling up their, in some cases, very small children and bringing them out to enjoy the balloons, and it's really good to see the all enthusiasm through all people through Hudson in this area.
Rapid City, more or less tourism type area, or at least right on the edge of the Black Hills. Is ballooning a big event out there, or?
Yes, it's growing. I moved to Rapid City a couple of years ago and have gotten a few more people started ballooning, and we've got about 15 or 16 balloons right in the Black Hills area.
So you moved to Rapid City from?
From Bismarck, North Dakota.
Okay, so it's sort of an interesting anecdote between you and Terry about license plate swapping?
Well, I'm not sure if we still have it all straightened out, and I've got an extra one in case you lose one. When I left North Dakota, Terry requested my license plates, the balloon license plates I had on my truck, so he was the first one to ask, so I donated those to him as I left and went to South Dakota.
What did they say?
Balloon.
Oh. And do your South Dakota ones say that now?
Yeah, we're looking at, we're not sure if I'm spelling it right or he's spelling it right. They're a little different.
And you lined your two trucks out. We notice that when you've seen them together, but apart, it's not quite as apparent.
Yeah.
It makes more of an impression when you just first see the license plate.
Well, there's a pilot that was supposed to be here this weekend that canceled, that couldn't make it, that has the Minnesota plates, I chase. And I have the Wisconsin plates, I chase.
So we could have another
And
pair of license
yeah,
plates.
we're always residents.
Can you actually go down the freeway and spell sentences under the license plate?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, Terry, you drove in from quite a ways, too, for this event.
Yeah, it was about, we drove for about, it's almost 600 miles to get here. I've been up here every year. This is your fourth rally. First rally, I called Rose up. I had never met her before, and she didn't know me, and I begged her to get in. I called her about 2 months before the rally, and she had already had 25 or 30 balloons already lined up, as much as she could handle. So I pretty much told her that I would do just about anything she wanted me to do, even haul some press people, you know, if I had to. So
Those nasty kind of people come around and ask you questions, put you on the spot.
So I've had the good fortune of being able to do that I think every time I've been up here, been able to work with the press.
Okay.
We've just had a really good time. Unlike Dave and Rose, the area I live in, there's very few hot air balloons. I have to travel 180 miles to the nearest pilot. So for me to fly in a group, you do have to travel quite a bit. But
Whatever possessed you to get interested in balloon flying when you're basically in the middle of nowhere, the north central area of North Dakota?
I hosted a balloon rally 4 years ago, and I knew nothing about hot air balloons. Basically, I got out the Encyclopedia Britannica and read about hot air ballooning and the history of
They have
ballooning.
balloons in there now?
I was really surprised to know. I don't know if you know this, Dave, but balloons have been around for a long, long time.
How long, Terry?
I understand it goes back to the late 1700s.
Ah.
And it started in France, you know. So we kind of carry on the traditions that were started many, many years ago. And we just really have a good time.
Yeah, Terry's area, in the rally that he ran, I went up and flew, and his balloon represents the International Peace Garden, and that alone, the garden was just fantastic, but it's real odd to be launching when you know you're on the United States-Canadian border, you know, which country you're going to land in kind of thing. But what was really unique and is really fun, because there are so few balloons in that area, you know, here in the valley, it's nothing to see 20 balloons on a weekend. I mean, the race brings in 40, but we have 20 balloons up on a good summer weekend all the time here. But you land out there and it's like somebody from outer space, because the people just go crazy because they don't see them.
I think
So
it was your crew, though. I don't think it was your balloon.
Yeah. Yeah. She backed up that trailer pretty good, though, I gotta say. But it was a lot of fun. It's a beautiful area up where he is to fly.
It's similar to Hudson, though. You know, we've
Yeah.
got a lot of lakes and a lot of trees.
People up there were kind of amazed they even let women fly balloons.
They even let us vote now, David.
When did they do that?
So does that pose any problem landing on one side of the border or the other?
We stay in the United States, so I was okay.
Okay.
I don't know.
I think I can answer that question. We've made arrangements with the Border Patrol in our area that should we cross the border, that we can check in on the way back. Our chase vehicle, however, will have to go through customs both ways. And they're very understanding about that. I guess it's one of the nice things about the U.S.-Canadian border. It's, how long is it? 1,800 miles of border that's undefended on both sides, so pretty open.
And Dwayne, you're one of our other guests from North Dakota. So you've driven in from quite some distance from Grand Forks?
Yeah, Grand Forks. It's about 340 miles
Mhm.
from Grand Forks to here.
Anything unique about you coming to this event? What would draw you here?
The winter event of it. I've never flown in the winter time until Rose asked me to come down here a couple years ago, and it's different. It's fantastic. I enjoyed it. Just the fact of getting away from the summertime flying and flying in winter. It is different, and it's very enjoyable.
So is this a lot different than flying in the Red River Valley?
Red River Valley, that's like flying across this table. It's flat country, you've got a road every mile, you've got a landing spot, there's no problem finding anything.
Your chase crew never loses you either.
Chase crew can never lose me.
I disagree with that.
That's a lie.
I disagree with that,
My wife
you guys.
isn't here, but she could tell you.
In Fargo, you can stand and see virtually 50 miles in any direction from the ground, but that, what is that river?
Red River.
Red River?
That's like this, and if you're flying parallel to it, and one time you're on one side, then you're on the next side, then you're on the next side, then you're on the next side when you're flying with it, and
And the
your
bri-
crew can lose you in North
And the
Dakota.
bridges are 50 miles
Yeah,
apart.
yeah,
You tell your
yeah.
crew, let's go over to Minnesota.
Yeah.
No, let's go back to North Dakota. We've got problems.
You can get lost up there.
So if you guys are flying like this, let's say you're out in Red River Valley and you're up in the air trying to get to someplace, what controls you? What controls a hot air balloon? How do you get where you want to go with it? Or don't you?
You don't have any control of it as to direction of where you want to go. You can go up and play with the winds and find where those winds are going. They're not the same at every altitude, not always. But sometimes they change, sometimes they don't.
You know the general direction that you're going. The winds will be like going this way, and you're trying to get over here by changing altitude. You can find winds sometimes going the right direction. You steer by changing altitude, but it's not a guarantee that you're going to end up there. We say we never know where we're going till we get there, and that's half the fun. It's just strictly a joyride.
Is there any problem when you're flying for flight time? Do you ever run out of fuel, so you have
No,
big problems?
You get low once in a while, but it's not like an airplane or a car. You get low, so you go on to refuel. So you've got to manage your fuel, keep an eye on it, so that you land. And once you decide to land, you've got to find. You're going with the wind, so this is a field. If you're going here, and that's the only field, and if you can't steer to it, you can't land. So when you decide to land, you want to make sure that you've got fuel left. I don't know, sometimes you end up flying for another hour, hour and a half maybe before you find a suitable spot.
Yeah, you always, in ballooning, you always leave yourself an out because there isn't that directional control. And so you always start looking for a spot when you've got plenty of time and plenty of daylight in order to take off again if you can't get to that
Okay.
spot that you thought you were going to get to.
Yeah,
So-
Rose, you carry a parachute.
Yeah. Not when I fly. Only when I fly with Bill.
I landed on top of
Probably
a
needs some
junior
explanation.
college. Quite a while, it was probably about 14 years ago, I landed on a junior college because I was getting low on fuel and it was getting dark and it was a desperate situation, and I was trying to get off of the Mississippi River, and the only place I got off, I'm right above the school, and it was either that or I was going to, the river swerved and I was going to go back out, so I just dropped down
On the building?
on top of the building. It was just a flat roof. I didn't deflate there, but I landed there, waited for somebody to come, and then I threw him the drop line, and I said, please pull me down.
Well, Dave,
Never
you
knew
landed
about
on
that
the
one.
building.
Yeah, remember
Didn't you
Louis' famous school landing? Did you ever hear about that story over in
No.
St. Paul?
You did.
Louis lands on top of the school, and the chase crew's not there. He's flying a little Rally 7. So he gets out of the basket, right, and the balloon obviously becomes buoyant because his weight's gone. And he just grabs the handles and backs off backward off the building. Just grabs the handles, backs off backward off the building, and the balloon drops to the ground, and he takes top off. It's the funniest thing I ever saw from the ground. The
leave
people,
it to
there was a
him.
softball game going, these people are just going, watching this guy pull his balloon off a building. Unreal. I never thought he could pull it off either.
So George, Bill, Russ, you guys are all local Twin Cities balloon enthusiasts? Are you part of the crew then that'll normally be seen over the St. Croix in summer?
No.
I'm not.
Where do you fly around
He
the Twin
is, yeah.
Cities? And flying out in the middle of nowhere, the Red River Valley, North Dakota is one thing. What do you do when you fly around a city of 2 million people? How do you control what's going on?
Russ flies a fairly populated area.
Yeah, I fly commercially for Remax Real Estate, and they've got me flying all over the state of Minnesota. So there's spots that I will not fly, I'll go and tether in because there's just no suitable landing, like up in Duluth or Bemidji and that type of thing. Around the cities, Lake Minnetonka, White Bear Lake, and then out to the west and south metro area. We don't stay in the Minneapolis proper.
Are there restrictions in you to fly around a metro area, especially at this
Yeah,
airport?
The FAA doesn't have any sense of humor when it comes to and you just don't come into those spots or put yourself in there. And it's getting so congested. What used to be landing spots years ago are now housing developments, so we keep having to adjust our launch sites accordingly. And we get up to the Coon Rapids area from time to time too, and we just plan so the wind's taking us away from the airport.
So in other words, you avoid the metro area by wind patterns, or?
Right. We want to get as much exposure in my particular situation as I can, but not to be foolish or dangerous.
Is there ever any possibility of getting close to aircraft with these, or is that pretty much not a danger?
No,
Something
they'll
big
get
as
close to
balloon?
us. We've got a guy down the south area that flies an old Piper, and he actually idles it down to about 40 miles an hour, opens the door and talks to us in circles.
Are you serious?
Where is this at?
Down south, just south of Lakeville area.
Really?
Yeah, all the time. And ultralights, they usually get fairly close to us.
Yeah,
They
those
get
do
in
here
There's a
too.
lot of ultralights
Yeah.
out here in the same.
Yeah.
We do what we can to keep the cattle and livestock from getting stirred up with a quiet burn, and they come by and stir them up with their ultralights. And,
But the balloons have right of way over any other aircraft other than an aircraft in distress.
Okay.
So if there's an airplane crashing, we have to get out of the way. Otherwise, everybody else has got to get out of ours.
So, you're a flyer in St. Croix then?
Yeah, that's where I mainly fly. I fly primarily for sport. I'm not a commercial pilot. I just fly for myself and my friends and have fun. And Rose took me under her wing when I moved here from Florida. So
Were you a pilot when you came up from Florida?
Mhm.
Is that different flying down in that warmer
it's
climate?
very different.
Listening to
Very,
the
very
stories of him
different.
flying
It's,
down there.
He used to
However,
weigh,
flying is
he used to
snappy,
weigh
too.
90 pounds when he used to fly down in Jacksonville. Heat and humidity, you know.
Packing up.
We tease him though. I flew with Bill last Monday, a week ago Monday, and I didn't land with Bill though. But anyways, he's flying along and he lands and I'm in the chase vehicle at this point. I had made a skydive out. Everybody in Hudson knows about that. But he
Except the
lands.
the appropriate
yeah.
people.
He lands and he says to the crew, he says, "Go up, take the next right, and there's a road that comes right on by me." We're driving along, and I said to the chase vehicle, I said, "This guy's from Florida. What do you bet he's on a snowmobile trail?"
It was a big snowmobile trail. Was he really? And it had little white lines down the middle and everything. So.
Thank goodness it was packed enough we could go in it. We drove in on it. They had no problem with us. The
Well, it
land
didn't
on
look
us.
like an alligator trail, so I figured it was a road.
Oh, we laughed.
So ballooning is pretty much a sport then across the entire country?
I would say.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, are the Twin Cities like a hotbed for ballooning? No pun intended.
There's quite a few, but it's nothing compared to like Texas and Arizona, or not necessarily
New
Texas, but
Mexico.
California and New Mexico.
Yeah.
Those
or even
areas.
Michigan.
Phoenix area.
One-
Phoenix has a lot of.
When I got started, there was only 3 balloons in the Minnesota-Wisconsin area. I used to come over to the St. Croix just so that we could fly as a group. And that was it for the state. There'd be a race, a 10-balloon race, and 7 of them would be from out of state. So it's grown quite a bit. There's probably 70 pilots.
I would say within a 80-mile radius, there's probably 70 balloons in the area.
It's a ride mecca up here, though. There's big demand for rides.
There is. So you can support your hobby by that, or
A lot do, and a lot choose not to. But
do you need to be a licensed pilot, certified?
Commercial, and for anything for hire,
Mhm.
and then private just for sport. So most people here are commercial.
So that is only for hot air balloon, or is that for a regular aircraft?
That's for any aircraft, as far as doing anything for hire has to be commercially rated.
But we all only, well, I
Most
shouldn't
of
say
the
that.
pilots
Most of
are.
the pilots here are strictly commercial lighter than air or private lighter than air. They don't
But that
fly
doesn't mean they
anything but balloons.
necessarily do rides. It's just that
So that's
they
a-
hold a commercial
Yeah.
ticket.
So it's a specific class of license for a hot air
Right.
balloon?
Yeah.
Right.
And that's controlled by what, the FAA then,
Yep.
or?
A lot of people think of a balloon as like a kite
Mhm.
that you go buy when you fly one. They don't. A lot of people just are surprised to hear that it's a licensed aircraft that has to be inspected and pass the regulations, as well as your training has to pass all those things too. And a lot of people don't realize that. They think it's, strictly a toy that one goes out and buys and plays with. and it's
So,
not.
if you want to buy a balloon, you don't go out to a used balloon lot. What do you do?
Well, there's contacts. I'm an Aerostar dealer. Bruce, are you still a Cameron dealer?
Not anymore.
There's different brands of balloons, just like there are different cars, not as many, of course. And there's not a very large turnover in ballooning, I don't think, as far as somebody buying a balloon and getting rid of it right away, deciding they don't like it, because most people will complete their training, then make the investment in getting one. You can't go rent a balloon like you can a car, because there's so few around, And so once you've met someone, I think primarily, I don't know about the rest of you guys, but I think almost everyone I've talked to will buy the brand of balloon that you were trained in, mostly.
Yeah.
If you were trained in an Aerostar, you buy or a Raven, you buy that. If you're trained in a Cameron, you buy a Cameron.
Are there differences, or?
Oh yeah, there's different styles and designs and burner output and basket styles and all that, and everyone has their preferences, and I'm still trying to figure out a way that you could take the best of all of them and put it all together, because they all have their good and bad points, you know.
Well, at least by the press photos, we didn't get a lot of balloons up today. But you see that there's a considerable difference in balloons. They don't look like the cars out in the parking lot. Are balloons custom designed, or
They
what
can
happens?
be. They can be. You can split the gore pattern, which is the stripes, I guess you would call it, or pattern of the balloon. Each one of those can be a different color, and it doesn't cost any more to be built. As soon as you start cutting horizontally, it starts making it more expensive. And, you know, people who have their certain designs or whatever, it's just a matter of preference and choice.
So your balloon, the Orion, was that a custom build?
Yes, but not by me. I bought that balloon used with 14 hours on it, and the gentleman who designed it served on the USS Orion in World War II, and his first balloon was what was called an overlay, where the warriors were cut out and sewn on the outside of the balloon. Well, then that balloon no longer was airworthy, it wore out, the fabric got old, and he built this one, which is an inlay, which each one of those patterns are cut out and separately stitched in, and then ran into some marital and financial problems. And the balloon was sold back to the dealer, and then I bought it from the dealer because of its uniqueness, and it's so pretty.
So what if someone was interested in getting into ballooning, or let's say perhaps they'd flown and gotten the bug, then what do they do?
Contact an instructor, through the person you take your first ride with, you're going to be able to get the right contacts of who to go through.
So it's like this network of people
Yeah.
once you start making contacts with
Yeah.
that.
Then they come out to Rapid City where the sun's shining.
Oh, you mean you left nice weather out there? It'll be here in 3 days.
Oh, this is the first year now, come on.
It's not over yet.
Yeah, it's not over yet. We
It's not
still-
over.
Well, that's the thing I'd like to add. We want to fly the balloons as badly as everyone would like to see them fly, but because of weather conditions and we have to do it safely and legally, we're certainly not going to fly the balloons. But,
So safety is a big concern with flying then?
yes,
Safety and regulations, we've got to stay within the FAA regulations, you know, even if we thought it was safe, we're still regulated by the FAA, and we've got to have certain visibility allowances and altitude or ceiling clearances before we can fly.
So you're regulated something like a beginning pilot's license for flight?
Any
what you can see?
any aircraft at all, we're under the same regulation as any airplane or anything as far as.
You know, like airplanes can fly through IFR weather conditions, you know, with their instrument.
Assuming you have an instrument
Right,
rating.
instrument ratings and that kind of thing, because they can steer and they can set their VORs and all that. Well, we can't do that. We are restricted, and these clouds this weekend are just too low. There's no way we can do it.
So
I would have to guess, though, that, or not even guess, but I'd have to say that among all these pilots that fly around here, that even if it's legal to fly, the safety is the first thing.
Oh, yeah,
That-
definitely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's always the top priority. So it's nice to fly with a bunch of pilots like that.
So although it may at first people think it looks a bit risky getting in a wicker basket, it's probably one of the safer things?
I would say so.
Safer than driving on the freeways?
Well, I would have to say that per capita accidents are a lot less.
Balloonists do learn how to say the word no,
Mhm.
and always look forward to tomorrow.
I think we've seen that today, and that's been really impressed with your guys' ability to hold back and say that the conditions just weren't good enough.
There are lots of cliches that
I think one of
illustrate
the
that.
ones that says it's always better to be on the ground wishing you were up there than up in the air wishing you were on the ground.
Right.
That's the one that I was thinking of.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So what's the minimum you need if you're going to fly? You're a hobbyist flyer. What do you look for? What's the ideal day when you wake up in the morning?
We need ceilings over 1,500 feet.
How do you find out about a ceiling?
We call a flight service station, and so the airports are reporting in what they are measured ceilings at. You know, they'll have an aircraft report to them while the clouds are at such a thing. Otherwise, they're measured by a pie ball, by letting a helium balloon go, and they judge the distance that it's climbing and the rate and all that.
Okay.
And winds, ideally winds less than 10 miles an hour, and no rain or snow. Although we can fly in light snow if the visibility is there, and it's not a problem. But of course, we're not going to fly in torrential downpour.
Several of those factors against us today.
Right. That's probably the most frustrating thing as a balloonist, is I'm sure all of us will agree, is weather. We are so weather restricted. You can't get up and say, well, I'm going to go fly today. No, you're going to check weather, and then you're going to plug your tanks in, and then, all of that. It's not like an airplane or a car where you can just get up and go. You are restricted, but I think these guys will all agree it's worth it. That's what makes it such a unique sport, and there aren't very many people in it, but that's something that you appreciate about it because it is so unique.
How many people can you carry up in like an average type balloon, the ones we see around on the St. Croix?
St. Croix?
Your average balloon that most people buy, it's classified as an AX7. It's usually 2 to 3 passengers. That's probably your average size. But there's balloons are measured by volume of air that they hold, and a 7 is 77,000. And there's balloons around that hold up to 210,000 or 250. Is there 250?
240.
240. And they'll carry like 10 and 12 people, but those are people that are just doing rides commercially, and they're more the exception than the rule.
So a balloon we would see over the St. Croix is, what, 77,000 cubic feet?
Cubic feet, yeah.
How high is that? You don't get a feeling when you're looking at that from the ground. How high does one of those balloons extend roughly? From the bottom of the basket to
They
the
say
top?
seven stories, so that's
55 feet.
55, 60 feet.
For an AX7, but
Yeah.
when you're talking about the St. Croix is a ride mecca, if I can coin your phrase. There's a lot of rides that are given to the St. Croix Valley between the two businesses on the Minnesota side of the river, and those balloons primarily are big. We've got a few of them in the area that carry 10 and 12 people, quite a few that carry 8.
So a lot of what we see locally then is commercial flights?
Right, a lot of what you see locally, primarily what you see locally, that or instructional flight. In the smaller balloons, you'll see instructional flight going on. I mean, the guy, you've got basically the same overhead except the investment in the balloon, but the guy who's into it for commercial rides is going to make a lot more money flying 8 people on one flight than they're going to make hauling 3.
Right. George, Bill, Russ, you guys are local. You don't have to drive very far to get to an event like this, but what got you hooked on this? Why hot air balloons?
Well, I got started, I used to hang glide. And then from hang gliding, I saw a lot of friends get hurt. My grandma showed me an article many years ago about ballooning, and I got into the sport that way. And I do most of my flying down Rochester, Minnesota. That's where I'm from. I moved to Burnsville like 4 years ago. And I kind of took a break from ballooning for a few years, and I'm just now getting back into the sport, kind of for the second time here. And I'm really glad to be here because I see a lot of people that I've known for years.
These races end up, not to take away from you, George, but they end up being like mini reunions. There's a lot of people that's the only time you see them is at races. So you like to go because that even 3, 4, 5 times a year is all you get to see the people.
I think you touched on one of the real strange aspect of balloons. You talked about you can't steer them, but you're calling it a race. What exactly would have transpired here today? Say the liftoff was at 7:30, 8 o'clock this morning. How do you race something you can't steer?
Well, it's really not a race. It's an accuracy competition more than anything because obviously we're all going the same speed. I would have been the hair balloon, which is the first balloon to lift off from the ground. And 5 minutes after I would have lifted off, the rest of the guys would have been allowed and released by the launch directors to try to chase me. And by watching the altitude or the wind line that I maintain from the different altitudes that I go up and down, they're going to track my wind line and try to get as close into my wind line as they can. I land and put out a 30-foot X, and they each behind me have a 5-ounce beanbag. And then they make their approach on the X and drop the bag as close as they can to the center of the X, and then we measure from the center of the X out to where the bag lands, and that's how the judge
How long does that tape measure have to be?
we cut off the measuring at 300 feet, and most of the time the pilots will be in there. But I don't know. We've all seen races where I seen one in the summer one time. Closest one was 3/4 of a mile away, and the only reason he won because he's the only one that threw. Everybody else was so far out. There's about a 30-degree wind shift after that first balloon left.
The winds are constantly changing, so sometimes everybody's close, and like Rose says, sometimes nobody's close at all, depending on whether the winds change or not. Usually,
that 15 minutes between the time the hair leaves and the first set of balloons chase.
Bruce, weren't you a hare down Rochester one year where you dropped in the valley and everybody ended up going past you?
No.
That wasn't you?
No, I think the one year that I was at, we landed right at school.
Well, someone was here. Yeah. Everybody passed them up. It was great.
They just kind of hid down there, huh? Well, I was hoping George was going to be my good luck charm. This was his first year here.
Yeah. Really.
And he ran the race down to Rochester for 9 years, and if you were going to Rochester, you were flying. It was a given. We always flew when we went to Rochester.
Yeah, really good luck.
It's been pretty good every year until he showed up.
Oh, maybe it worked the opposite.
My
huh?
first year here, and here we sit around the table.
Nah, well, you can come back.
It sounds like a fascinating hobby that brings all you together, and thanks for gathering and sharing some of your feelings for why you come around and do this type of thing.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Thank you.
You can roll credits now.
Is that a wrap?
Yeah, one of these.
Hello, we're here today with Barbara Stewart, it is?
It is.
It is, and she's a world-famous kazooist. We're not quite sure what a kazooist is, but I think we're going to find out. We're standing here in the frozen plains east of the E.P. Rock Elementary School in Hudson, and last night there was an attempt in downtown Hudson to set a world's record for kazooists. And we're not quite sure what happened down there, but we're going to ask the expert here, our kazoo leader. What happened last night downtown?
Well, it's my belief that we set the Guinness Book of World Records for the world's largest kazoo marching band. There is no prior record, so I'm sure this was it. So we've done it. And if we didn't have enough people, then we think big anyway, so we should get the record anyway.
So tell me, how do you train somebody, how do you get somebody ready for a kazoo marching band of possibly millions here to break this record?
Well, you need at least 5 minutes of practice and a lot of instruction, of course, on how to kazoo. You say the word do into the instrument, and you're ready.
So there's this large classical repertoire that kazooists have to know of musical ability before they can play in such an orchestra.
Oh, in the hands of an expert, of course, the kazoo is at its best, the same as any other instrument. But anybody can play. If they can sing, talk, or hum, they can kazoo, of course. The best part about the bands is getting ready for it, and the costumes and the maneuvers and so forth. We had the baton dropping contingent, and then we had the colorless guard with the white flags of surrender in case we needed them. And people spent a lot of time doing kazoo modification in the Viking Electronics factory, of course. And you could see the really fine amplification changes to the normal, just cigar-shaped kazoo.
So like many classical instruments, there are modifications that are made to customize most people's kazoo, and people took liberties to do those for last night's event?
Oh, they took license. Oh, yes, they did. They were absolutely magnificent. And they did the northern Wisconsin Hudson Huddle as a formation. It's a new arrangement that we did to make certain that it was, first of all, warm, and if they bunched together closely enough, then no one would know what they were supposed to be doing, so they couldn't do it wrong.
Is this also done somewhat then to hide the individual's identity when they're playing such an instrument?
Oh, no, it's to preserve their individual integrity, so their individual expression comes out as a group movement.
So the kazoo then, both being an instrument of masses, also was an instrument of individual expression then last night?
Oh, it is, and it's the instrument of the common people. It's nothing if not common. And it's really time for America to recognize the kazoo as its national instrument. It is a Native American instrument from Macon, Georgia, native to Macon, Georgia, invented by Alabama Vest, an American black and made to his specifications by Thaddeus von Clegg, a German clockmaker. And we have had this campaign to make the kazoo the national instrument, the nationalization campaign, since 1976. And it's now in its stage which the experts, the viewers term dormancy. But perhaps with the new political changes, we'll have some liberalization in this attitude toward the kazoo. Keep America humming.
So with the groundswell of these political changes being in to get America working, to get our economy back working, and looking at the popularity of last night's event, conservatively, how many people do you think attended the mass kazooing?
Oh, there were several. There were quite a few. There were 3 or 4 I saw right away. And there were 2 dogs, 2 women from Milwaukee, and, well, there were a bunch of kazooists. I can't tell you how many.
Are there any safety precautions one must take when one's a kazooist?
Well, the white flags were good, of course, in case they marched on the audience by mistake, and that's not bad. Rust is a big problem, of course. Inhalation of the dust and so on. But that's why we're using the plastic all-weather kazoos out here in Wisconsin. We don't use the metal ones outdoors. Of course, your tongue or teeth could adhere. But somebody had their tongue stuck last night and they had to go to the emergency ward, but just that one used the metal kazoo.
So other than those type of personal precautions, are there any environmental cautions of kazooing?
Well, of course, this is the hot air affair, this ballooning affair here, so that this is acceptable up here. Environmental. I don't know. I think it's generally a good thing for the country.
Well, thank you. The mass...
That's not what you can kazoo for your country.
Thank you. From the Hot Air Affair in Hudson for Channel 10, this is Randy Olson with the Masked Kazooist.
Things are looking really good for tomorrow's flights. We've got a 7:30 a.m. flight, we've got a 3 o'clock in the afternoon flight, and a 7:30 moon glow. Hope everyone will come out.
you so much for participating. It's a good deal. Yes, everyone for themselves now. We should be in the Guinness Book. It was an awfully big rig. warm-up section of...
There's glue on the track! Swashbucklers dump glue on the track!
Why, these guys run over innocent children at the finish line. This is a travesty, ladies and gentlemen. There are no rules. Simple. But the 9th grade boys have not lost today. If they win this heat, they are the undisputed heavyweight champions of Hudson in smooshboarding. If the Smooshbucklers win this heat, they losing their first heat, a heat, I might remind you, that was as ugly as they must race again against the 9th grade boys. That's right, Tom. That's with 2 fingers. White and proud. And their mark. Get set, go! The Smooshbucklers finished in 2nd place, and in 3rd place was the Deadliners. Let's get a hand out of the contestants today. We have to give an award for the best dress. They're staging already. Let's try the 4 Chiquitas. Let's hear it from the crowd. This is like an auction, isn't it? Right here, $1. Oh. Okay, the next group, who do we have here? Do we have the flying females around? Let's have them take the runway. Ladies and gentlemen, the flying females. Right this way, ladies. The last one. The next team we'll have are the Bag Ladies. The Bag Ladies. Very fashionable girls. The Deadliners. The 9th grade. The next team is the RPG Woodpile. I think they might be. They're down at Dick's, I'm sure. Thumpers! Do we have thumpers here? One more time, right here. Smart move, boys. The winners of our event today 8th grade boys. Nice job, boys. All right, so who do we give the best dressed prize to? The Chiquitas are the winners. Congratulations, Chiquitas. Okay, each winner, this plaque goes to the year 2003. It is a traveling plaque that will be held at the Chamber of Commerce, and the name of the 9th grade boys will be on it as this year's champions. Congratulations. Let's give them a hand. Okay. For clarifying that, Art, try to get this crowd to believe that. Okay, we've got sweatshirts for you. Well, Robin, that's her 3rd sweatshirt from the Hot Air Affair. How nice. You've got Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday now covered.
Say hi to the pilots. They've traveled from many states.
Thank you.
Community Channel 10 in Hudson, Wisconsin.